Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fireside chat conversation. I'm going to give it a few seconds for people to start joining this live conversation. And if you can join for the full conversation, we will be recording the event and we'll be sharing it on our social media platforms for you to access it at any time and also for you to share it with colleagues, friends, and family who you think could benefit from learning a little bit more about what seeking asylum looks like now that Title 42 has ended. So being mindful of everyone's time, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Ana Ortega Villegas. I'm the program director at Mobile Pathways. And before starting with our conversation, I would like to briefly introduce our panelists. I will briefly pass you the mic, Erica and Emily, to introduce yourself, tell us where you work, and again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, my name's
Emily, do you
Erica.
want to? I'm sorry.
All right, Hannah. My name's Erica Sher Cardona. I teach in the Refugee Human Rights Clinic. I'm an immigration attorney, and I teach up in Portland, Maine at the University of Maine School of Law.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Miller. I work at Twilio in the social impact arm, twilio.org, and I manage our impact fund. So that is all of our grant making and impact investing that we do. Excited for the conversation.
Thank you both for joining us and for making time for this brief fireside chat conversation on our asylum process post Title 42. Before jumping in and diving into the information that we want to share with you all today, I want to provide a few background on what it is that we're trying to accomplish today and how we're going to do it, and also give you a little bit of information on what has been happening around our asylum system recently. So we're going to try to give you a brief glimpse of some of the challenges being encountered by people seeking asylum who are stranded at our border with Mexico, particularly after the end of Title 42. And we will also talk briefly about how mobile technology tools are very useful in their responses to forced displacement and humanitarian situations, like the one we are seeing in our borders, in our southern borders, and how these tech tools should never be used to impede, to block, or to force people to remain in danger. And before continuing, just a little bit of background on where our current state of asylum stands. As some of you may be familiar with, you probably heard the phrase Title 42. Title 42 has ended, but let me tell you a little bit of what Title 42 did. So Title 42 is a CDC public health policy that was misused for 3 years by both the former and the current administration, um, using the COVID-19 pandemic as an excuse to block and impede asylum seekers from seeking protection in our southern borders. So during the use of Title 42, border officials expelled many asylum seekers and people seeking protection and forced them to remain in very dangerous regions of the Mexican border. And as of December of last year, Human Rights First, who did a lot of the on-the-ground research and documented the impact of Title 42, of the misuse of the Title 42 policy, their research team tracked over 13,000 incidents of murder, trafficking, extortion, rape, and other violent attacks of people who were expelled to danger using Title 42 as the excuse by border officials. And as of May 11, Title 42 has ended. This is due to the end of the public health emergency that was lifted, that our federal government lifted. So this meant that Title 42 also had to go. Instead of being able to celebrate the end of this very cruel and harsh policy that was forcing to keep people in danger, we were slammed with uh, something very similar to we saw in the previous administration, an asylum rule, or simply put, a ban to asylum that continues to force people to remain in danger in very difficult situations and precarious conditions on the Mexican side of our border. So some people, some friends, some family, some colleagues who are not as familiar or informed on the current state of asylum may think that now that Title 42 has ended, people who are seeking protection are now able to do so. But the message that we want to transfer here is that that's not the case, and that Title 42 expulsions have unfortunately been replaced with very similar practices. So let me tell you a little bit about what this new rule that came into effect that same day, May 11, is forcing people to do. So this new rule is simply forcing people to remain in very dangerous places. And this rule will most likely continue to be in effect for the next 2 years. This rule requires people to first request asylum in a country they have transited prior to reaching the US. Not only request asylum, but be denied that protection by countries, say Mexico. And if that's the case, and only then you can seek protection in the US. We know that a lot of people who are seeking protection are fleeing persecution, violence, and that they will most likely, based on research, will endure that same type of violence in countries they transit, including Mexico. So forcing people to request asylum and wait for that asylum request to be processed, it's simply very cruel, and it's blocking them from seeking protection in the US. This new rule is also forcing the use of the CBP1 mobile app to request people who want to seek protection to first download an application, fill it out, wait for the application to get wait for their information to get processed, wait for an appointment so that they can then arrive and present themselves at a port of entry to seek protection. To many, this may sound as a system that makes sense and that is well established, but if you really think about it, what we are asking people to do, who are we asking to follow these new rules? We're asking people who are in desperate need of protection, who have to flee, who are being persecuted, to make sure they have a smartphone with enough data, with tech resources, and to take the time to request that application and to wait for that appointment. Based on research conducted by Human Rights First and on observations, people have been waiting for over 6 months to receive an application. And we will briefly talk a little bit more about some of the difficulties that the CBP1 mobile app has, of some of those glitches that we also covered on our previous fireside chat conversation. But before continuing, I would like to pass it to my colleague Erica. Erica, you traveled to Laredo, Texas, 1 week after May 11, and you served individuals who, although they were not impacted by the asylum ban because they had entered prior to May 11, they were still detained in Custom and Border Patrol processing facilities where they now have to undergo a credible fear interview screening, something that we have not seen before, a process that hadn't happened in these processing facilities before. Can you briefly talk to us about this experience, your observations, and how having access to legal information can change someone's asylum claim for good?
Thank you, Anna. Yes, it was remarkable. I just happened to be going there as part of a program that we do with Jones Day law firm that our law school does. And so it just happened to be right at the time it was ending. The reason most of the people I was speaking with weren't subject to the ban is, as you said, they had entered and were detained prior to the May 11th. But now folks have even a larger hurdle than the ones that I spoke with back in May. So the CFI process is not a new process. And to be clear to folks, asylum law itself has not changed. What has changed that Anna was talking about is that there's some new restrictions, some new hurdles that folks who enter the southern border now have. The CFI process, the credible fear interview, is if you're detained at the southern border, and there's some legalese I won't get into, then you have to pass what's called a credible fear interview. And what was new for the first time when we went down there is that people were being detained at the Customs and Border Patrol facility, not the ICE facility is typical. An ICE facility, which has happened for many years, lawyers can go and meet with folks there. But when we were there, we were talking to folks detained in the CBP facilities throughout the southern border, and they only had access to attorneys on the phone. And we were not able to meet with anyone in person. This is the first time that these people who were detained were able to talk to a lawyer. And what's so awful about what I'm about to say is, in some ways, these folks were the lucky ones. They were the ones who were able to get through. They were the ones who were no longer in danger from the different things that were happening on the other side of the border. They were the ones who were able to talk to an attorney. And yet there were so many others that we couldn't begin to talk to. But some of the issues we saw is that they were, the phones were not always reliable, even with best intentions, that we were getting disconnected, that we weren't always having interpretation that we needed. We had Spanish interpreters, thanks to our incredible patrons. We had Spanish interpreters there, but sometimes we were getting people who spoke Haitian Creole or French or something like that, even though that wasn't part of it. The CBP, so what did we do as attorneys? What did we do the most important thing that we could do for these folks was help frame their lives, which we all live our lives. You ask me what's the most important thing, I'll lead with my children, right? We think of our lives in a certain way as humans. That's human nature. But our asylum laws are very specific, and they don't follow many people's normal way of thinking. So if you say, why did you flee? I might tell you because my children were at risk, or my children are hungry, or things like that. Well, unfortunately, that is not how our asylum law works. So by speaking with these folks and listening to them and having them tell their story, and then helping them to frame it in the context of asylum law, we were able to see these people, many of them did have asylum claims. Some may not, some did. And we were helping to frame their story to fit the law, which is something really you need legal training to do, or really have a lot of experience. And it's too, personally, I think it's too much to ask a person who's in a state of trauma to understand, who comes from a completely different legal system in a completely different country, doesn't speak a language, to fit into our idea of what is asylum law, or our laws, or United States laws. So that's what I was doing. I was speaking with people on the phone, I was listening to their stories, and then I was helping reframe what they told me into a way that would fit, and hopefully give them a better chance when they pass when they would hopefully pass, when they would talk to an asylum officer about the credible fear interview. Folks who are there now down at the border, including one of my terrific students, have an additional burden because of this ban you were talking about. And that makes it a two-step process. That means even more that these folks need legal aid, legal access to lawyers who can help frame these, because these exceptions are very, very rare. The other thing I just want to mention is I'm up in Maine, nowhere near the southern border. But one thing about this process, about even if someone passes the credible fear interview, which is a lower standard, but even if they pass all these hurdles, it is just the beginning. It is just the beginning of the journey for these folks who are seeking asylum. I could spend more than 30 minutes talking about the journey of an asylum seeker. And so this is a critical first step. It's one that can be helped with technology. It's one that needs to be fixed, but it is just the first step. And so that's one thing I want to have you folks end with, is that we are seeing up in the interior, or even up in Maine, far from the southern border, what happens when people get through, and how the process is still challenging. And I could use a lot of other words, but I'll end it with challenging.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you for the work that you did. I really trust and believe that you did help the, even if it was a small fraction of the people that you were able to serve. I do believe that we were both able to see the power of communication, the power of information, the power of having that legal, not representation, because you were not allowed, unfortunately, to provide that representation. And there was also no time, but just sharing basic knowledge. And I think you were able to even detect that on the voices of people that you were serving, how it really, just providing them that basic information, you gave them the tools that they need to advocate for themselves and hopefully secure that protection that they need. And yes, a reminder that with this new ban to asylum, a lot of these people may not be able to qualify for asylum because of the legal restrictions or requirements that the asylum ban carries with itself. And we will drop in the chat more information on in a summary of the asylum ban if you're interested in learning more about it. And before passing it to Emily, I wanted to talk briefly a little bit about the CBP1 mobile app and the glitches that it continues to have. If you are a follower of Mobile Pathways, you probably saw our previous event where we talked about these glitches. But last week, I had the opportunity to join the Human Rights First research team to observe what these tech glitches mean and look like for people who are stranded on the border. I won't go too much into detail, but I do encourage you to follow Human Rights First on their social media platforms. They will be releasing a report on the observations conducted last week. But what I can share with you is from my personal observations is how technology in this specific case with asylum seekers and with the CBP1 mobile app, how technology is failing some of the most vulnerable populations who are in desperate need of protection. And just to give you a brief foundation of what I mean from here, some of the people that we spoke with were not tech savvy. They didn't really understand what it meant to download an app, or some people don't have an email account, and it was difficult for them to understand how that tech process works. Something that for us is very simple, but I know that for some, you're still asking your 15-year-olds to help you download an app. So imagine being asked to do this when you're someone seeking protection, when you're someone fleeing persecution, and even worse, you have to wait for an appointment. And as I mentioned prior, some people have been waiting for months. Some others are waiting for weeks. Some others are waiting days. It's also a very unfair system. People have referred to it as a lottery system. It's not sure how long people will have to wait. And also just not having access to reliable and strong Wi-Fi connectivity. Data is very expensive. Some of the people in who are stranded at the border don't have a home. Of course, they fled their homes. Shelters are at capacity. Even charging your phone is something very difficult. Some people even have to pay to charge their phone. You will read more about this in the report that Human Rights First will publish soon. We will make sure to amplify it. But I do want to leave you with an observation of a father who said, because of this app, because I want to do things the right way, I want to get my appointment, I want to request my appointment, but I'm forced to decide how I should spend my money. Do I buy data to add it to my phone to continue requesting that appointment, or do I buy food to feed my family? I think this is very unfair, and this is an example of how the technology that our government is using through the app is not serving the purpose that we should expect it should be serving, which is protecting those in need. And with this message, I want to pass it to my colleague Emily from Tulia.org. Emily, Can you tell us a little bit about the work of Tulio and their response to the global displacement situation that we're facing? And talk about your theory of change a little bit for our audience to understand what your team is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. And I saw that Alma pointed out that it is World Refugee Day. So our conversation is extremely timely, and it's something that we care a lot about. For those who aren't aware, so Twilio, we're a public company here in the US. We're the leading customer engagement platform. And really what that means is that we use our technology to get in touch with your customers or your beneficiaries, whether that's through chat, text, voice, email, so we have all these different channels. And we're really kind of the experts in this space. So Twilio.org is our social impact arm. And I would be remiss if I didn't, mention that I manage our impact fund for Twilio.org. So that's all of our grant making and our impact investing, and Mobile Pathways has been an incredible grantee of ours. So we're just so fortunate to support your work and to kind of be alongside you, throughout this journey. But we went through an exercise over the past year as an organization to say, how do we want to focus our time and our resources? We care a lot about making an impact in the world. That's why we have our social impact arm. So we went through this exercise of really asking, like, what are some of the biggest problems in the world today? And also, how does our technology play a really unique role in solving these challenges? And what we're talking about is what led us to, our kind of North Star. One of our three pillars of our theory of change is all about supporting displaced people in humanitarian crises. And that this is exactly what we're seeing at our southern border here in the US. And just to take a step back, to kind of zoom out and understand the kind of global scale of this problem, 274 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance this year. That's like a record, right? We're seeing over 1 billion people that are living in very fragile settings, right? Whether that's due to conflict, war, or climate change induced natural disasters, right? So we're just seeing a massive amount of people displacement, and we're going to continue to see a massive amount of people displacement. And when we looked at our technology, obviously, we reach people via text, right? We're able to share real-time information with folks around the world. And we realized, like, UNHCR and Accenture did a study, 71% of refugees worldwide have a mobile phone. Now, that's not a smartphone. I will make the distinction, not necessarily a smartphone. And that gets to some of the pain points that Anna mentioned with the mobile app and kind of the kind of access problems there. But 71% have a phone in their hands. And when we talk about a population that's on the move, right? They're literally on the move. And for the most part, they don't have, one place that they're at. That mobile phone is their lifeline. And so things like getting real-time information via text messaging can be life-changing, especially in the case of our asylum seekers and immigrants who are trying to access our system. So, that's kind of part of the thinking why we decided to focus on really supporting displaced people. We knew that our technology, really had a unique advantage here, and it's accessible, right? It's like really meeting people where they are. We've seen time and time again that that mobile phone in their hand is really their connection to a path forward in many cases. So just really grateful for the work that you all do, and happy to be here. Hope to answer some questions too.
Thank you, Emily. And I think we are very grateful to have you, your support as a colleague, but also to have the support of your entire team. Without you and your team, we wouldn't be able to have the impact that we've had so far, and that we will continue to work towards to this type of process. And thank you to Erica, who is mentoring and teaching hopefully future immigration attorneys who will have the very difficult responsibility and also the honor of helping people who most need it to reach protection, to receive protection, and to hopefully help them have a better life in the US, where they will hopefully call the US their home. And thank you for reminding us that today is World Refugee Day. We hope that today it's a very special day for people in our field. We ask, first of all, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you found this very brief overview. Of course, we didn't cover everything. There is so much to explain. It's very complicated, and things are changing as the days progress. But we ask you to please stay informed. We encourage you to reach out to your members of Congress to ask them to hold the administration accountable for the protections to our asylum system, and to ask them to restore the asylum system. Spread the word on what's happening. You can volunteer at shelters in a nearby shelter who is hosting a refugee or asylum seekers. My colleague Jamal is going to drop a list of organizations that are doing work on the ground at the advocate level, in hopes that you can support their work, and together we can achieve the change that is needed so that people who are in desperate need of protection can reach safety. We have a few minutes. I will pass it to our audience on the chat if there are any questions. If not, I will open the mic to Erica and Emily for any last comments, concerns, or if you would like to share a little bit of the work that your teams are doing on how we can support you. Please feel free to go off mute while we get some questions. And if we're not able to answer your questions now, we will make sure to follow up on your social media platforms.
I would just say, I said to Anna and Emily when we first met that I think that some lawyers, myself included, have an inverse relationship between technology, and I wish I knew it more, because we don't, us lawyers, some of us don't even know how to use technology except for the few. But I can tell you very quickly that the clients we see, technology is it's their lifeline. As Emily said, they have smartphones. That is their way. So the idea that we could move forward as a society in this 21st century and be able to get their notices from the government on their smartphone, that we wouldn't have to, that people who don't have physical addresses because they're staying in shelters wouldn't have an additional hurdle, that they can't, it's just this interface is unnecessary. So I think I think technology is so critical as we move forward in this. People move around, people are transient, even people who aren't asylum seekers. So I think that the interface is so critical. And I would also say, just in terms of being a law professor, that it is the next generation. It is the people we're teaching. It is the students we send to the border and the young first year attorneys and all that, because that is where the changes are going to come. And so I just couldn't underscore enough that if there are any young people on this fireside chat, that it is you. We're here to mentor and guide you, but we believe in you, and we know that you're going to come up with terrific solutions that we haven't even thought about. So I applaud you for doing the work, and I believe in the future because I see my students. So that's my 2 cents, Anna.
Well, thank you so much. I don't believe I see questions on the chat. And
There's
if we
one,
missed
Anna, that
any,
just jumped on.
go ahead.
Oh, it just said, do judges that follow the applicants have help with tech and may still be illiterate or educated? Will they be able to tell the fake applicants from the real applicants? I assume that's a two-part question about telling the fake applicants from the real applicants. And I think when we say fake applicants, there's so many nuances with that. I mean, whether someone fits into our strict definition of asylum law, I would not call them all a fake applicant. So I think that's a hard bit to answer. But the judges, the people who you are able to say in your application if you're illiterate or uneducated, or if you don't understand. I don't know about with the CB1 app because I don't know how well that's been working, but I know when you apply for asylum, but you do need to prepare a written, eventually, if you can pass this, you do need to prepare a written application, but you can get assistance. But with the CFI, it's over the phone with an asylum officer. So education levels shouldn't be, and I don't know about the CB1 app.
Thank you. I think with the CBP1 mobile app, the concerns that we have is first that it should not be the only way to request protection or to request asylum. And so that's one very strong message. It should not be the only path to seeking protection. people who present at a port of entry should still be able to voice that need for protection because it's written on US and international law. And again, on the CBP1 mobile app, the glitches that the app is having is just an app that's crashing, an appointment that is taking months to be processed or to be received. Are issues that I can assure you that if the population that the app was serving was different, there would be a lot of people complaining and making these changes happen. And we have to remind ourselves that this app is negatively impacting people in desperate need of protection, and it's forcing them to remain in danger, and inevitably it's separating families. And that's something that we will continue to ask our government and to continue issuing those recommendations on, first, how this app should not be the only way that someone can seek protection, and how the app glitches are having horrible impacts on the users, and that it must be fixed immediately. We have reached the time for this conversation. Unless anyone else could have has any other comments, we will end it here. Again, if you were unable to join the live conversation, we will be sharing the recording. If there are any questions that we were unable to answer, please reach out. We will make sure to follow up with you. And to our amazing panelists, Emily and Erica, thank you so much for making time to sit with me today and to share your knowledge and the amazing work that you're doing with our audience. I hope this is not the last opportunity that we have to spread the message together. And to the audience, again, many thanks for being with us today. Please be safe, take care, stay hydrated, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.